Welcome to the Open Apple Podcast, where we celebrate the Apple II. Whether you're a longtime user, a nostalgic visitor, or a newcomer to the community, join us as we share news and memories of Steve Wozniak's most famous personal computer.
Hello and welcome to Poly Retro Assemblycast Chicken Missile Drop Grue Museum, the annual Megapodcast for KansasFest this year for 2021.
Woohoo! Yay! All right.
Yahoo! Yeah. Charles, take it away.
Thank you, Quinn. I don't know if we want to go around and introduce ourselves. Probably best if we keep it brief. I will go. I'll go first. I'm Charles Mangan. I'm the chicken projectilist. I don't know. For Chicken Missile, which is actually an offshoot of this very podcast's previous years, turned into a semi-regular kind of a thing. And going alphabetically by first name, Carrington.
Hello, I'm Carrington, and I'm on things like the RCR and Chicken Missile and Eaten by a Grue.
And Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris Torrance, and I have a YouTube channel called Assembly Lines, and you can find me on Twitter at CT6502.
Joe?
Joe Strohsnyder from Joe's Computer Museum on YouTube, where I take apart old 8-bit computers and try not to blow them up. You can find me on Twitter at Museum Joe.
Okay. Kate, you need to match his level of enthusiasm.
I used that up earlier this afternoon. Hi, I'm Kate. A lot of people also call me Kat. I have a Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Lady Iluros. Probably want to look that one up in the comments. And I'm also on Chicken Missile occasionally.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kay Savitz, Eaten by a Grue, and Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
Ken?
Hi, I'm Ken Gagney of Juice.gs Magazine, also the podcast Transporter Lock and Polygamer, and I keep Chris Torrance in my closet.
Mark, who do you have in your closet?
Beagles.
I can work with that.
And that is Michael.
Hi, I'm Mike Mulhern, Retro Computing Roundtable. I'm the Down Under connection.
Paul?
I'm Paul Hegstrom. I'm on Retro Computing Roundtable. Very occasionally on Drop 3 Inches, sometimes on Chicken Missile as well.
And bring us home, Quinn.
Once again, screwed by the alphabet. I am Quinn of the Retro Computing Roundtable and also the YouTube channel Bloody Hacks, but that's actually unrelated to all of this.
Well, not as screwed as me.
No, not really.
Yeah, it's a damn good YouTube channel. Plenty of retro stuff
you do some
going
retro
on there.
stuff. Yeah.
Heavy metal, girl.
Did I skip you, John?
Yes. You skipped me. It's okay. I'm used to it. No.
See, I'm next to you. I wish I could hand you a Kleenex through the Zoom.
Hey, I'm John Leake. I am the co-host of the Retro MacCast. You can find us on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts.
John, you have to do your Alf impression.
Ken. Every year. Okay.
Excellent. So I had a couple of ideas of things that we could talk about. Obviously, the usual thing with sort of a recap of KansasFest for people who were not here, were not able to attend. A little different, of course, from most previous years because we're all in different places. Last year was virtual as well, and that was kind of thrown together really quickly and went off, I would say, without a hitch. And this year seemed to go even more smoothly because I'm guessing that the planning was more robust, I guess.
I mean, it was nice to know at the beginning. We knew from the beginning that this was going to be virtual, and we were able to, instead of having to pivot this year, we actually could start at the, we know this is going to be virtual. What can we do to make it better than last year.
Basically building off our working from home experience.
I didn't get to work from home.
I occasionally got to work from work.
So I think to keep the podcast under 2 hours or hour and a half or
3,
whatever, we're going to topic number 1, what we won't be talking about. We won't be talking about COVID, vaccines, lockdowns, any of that kind of stuff. And we'll just skip right into everyone can say KansasFest is about the people.
It's the people.
It's the people. No, it really is.
It's the people. It's the people.
There was no most of the people. No, there was no one here
except you. You know who you are.
Yeah. You know what you
Carrington.
did.
Yeah, it's Carrington.
I knew what I did.
The sad thing is he does not know who he is.
Yeah, that is the sad part.
So with that out of the way, Michael, you're calling in from the farthest away. What did you think? How much of the virtual KansasFest were you able to attend?
Well, I decided I was going to attend it all, even if it did mean getting up before midnight so that I could tune in. So, I'm waiting for this show to end so I can have breakfast. But the way things are going, I think it might be called lunch. So, it was great. And I love, in my opinion, we had the best presentation right at the end. It might not have been what I was expecting, but boy, an Apple II, that was unreal.
Can you talk about what that was for the listeners, Michael?
Did.
It was a virtual reality Apple II with all the bells, whistles, drive clacks, green screen, real basic programming in there, interfacing into a game. I'm just going to have to find the link for that and send that out to some of the folks I keep in communication with at work who haven't burnt the bridges, or I haven't burnt the bridges with them on. But no, it was one of the best implementations of an emulator that I have seen of any hardware, and the extension of it that it could be used for so many different things, from virtual museums, teaching. It was just fan-freaking-tastic.
So for anyone who missed it, it was an Apple II modeled and built in the Unreal game engine, and then there was a real emulator underpinning it so that you could actually write code on the Apple II, and then he provided a memory mapped connection to the game environment so you could control doors and things in the game with Apple II code. It's a little mind-bending, but very clever, very cool.
That was the thing that actually sort of struck me the most, that I expected the least about that, was the sort of like missed like puzzle aspect to it, that, there's knobs in the wall that you have to turn and you have to poke things in memory and read things. And so it was really part of the game in a real way.
I'll be honest, I thought that was going to be a quick chance for me to rush away and get some breakfast. And I'm just glad that I saw how it was developing, and it was amazing. So I think we've got to get that YouTube link out if it's going to be available.
Yeah, it seemed to me like a major evolution from those choose your own adventure kind of books where it would get to the end of a chapter and it would say, oh, you need to decode these, this message. And now that you've learned from the previous chapters, you can write it in BASIC on your computer, or here's the BASIC code. You need to debug it. And that's just like, it's in the game. You, as part of the game, you're typing in and controlling. He showed like controlling the charging of a capacitor that opened a door. And it's like, that's a huge puzzle to solve, but also that's a really good lesson for someone who's learning programming.
Yeah, I was expecting him to poke in the incorrect value and start releasing poisonous gas into the environment system, and he needed to get it fixed quickly. But no, it's. But yeah, it was a great way of capping off a marvelous 2 days of presentations. As far as presentations go, from all of the in-person K-Fests and last year, I think this was the one that I enjoyed the presentations the most. It was amazing. And if we can sort of like keep that kind of level going, KansasFest has got another 30-something years in it.
Quinn, you're up next on my screen. What was your first impression? Best impression?
Yeah, I guess I was expecting to be similar to last year, and it was in a good way. I think for a lot of folks, the virtual K-Fest is kind of their first experience with like actually going to all the sessions. And I'm a sessions person. When I'm at K-Fest, I go to basically all of them. I really like it. So I miss most of what happens in the lobby and so on. But I really enjoy the talks, and there was a lot of good ones this year. It was hard to pick a winner, honestly. I really enjoyed Jeremy Rand's talk about his graphics engine in Bugs.js. That was great. There was a wrapper for MAME for emulating the GS that I loved. That was really great. It's hard to even pick a favorite. There were so many good ones. The double high res video streaming from the CFFA. I mean, we've been talking about that for a little while now on the podcasts, but to see it all, in detail, exactly how he did it, was really amazing. That's one of those tricks that's so good that people don't believe it. And, he's been showing that hack on Facebook and other places, and people don't believe him that it's real. It's that good. So that's certainly the sign that you're doing something really special and really new.
Yeah, a lot of GS love this year. I saw a number of the sessions coming up when they were announced. It's like there's a lot of 16-bit stuff.
Yeah, unusual. Usually it's just me and Dagan sitting in the extra room crying into each other's shoulders. But no, this year it was all GS all the time.
Next year, Paul, that's the year for the 3.
Absolutely. I also thought that this year was really the year that MAME shined. Not just from Calvin Sherlock's ample front end, which he had a whole presentation on, which you should definitely watch and use, which I do use, but also, talking about Apple III emulation and Paul's talk and, several other things. And somebody was, taking screenshots, and someone's like, oh, what emulator is that? And the answer was always MAME. Anyway, I've been using it for testing WAS support in emulators, but like I didn't realize that anyone else had sort of noticed that MAME was actually a really good Apple II emulator now. Anyway, it's great to see.
Yeah, for a long time it couldn't do like the 2C or the C+, or I can't remember what it was. It was sort of hit and miss as far as what it was, what it supported.
Yeah, no, it's gotten a lot of very dedicated love from developers. I know that Cucumba is active in that development, somewhat active in that development community as well. And so he's sort of been a bridge to some people who wouldn't otherwise, bother, posting a
they're not going to pay attention to a bunch of hobbyists, but when it's
right, but it's someone, it's one of their own that they trust, who can reproduce anything. And anyway, so but that doesn't come for free. Like that, there's a lot of development hours put into allowing you to boot any of these, much less the fancy stuff that we've seen.
Yeah, I think the level of support that MAME is getting right now, even on the Apple II, that was a real big takeaway for me from the Apple presentation, was that he said there's something like 60 new commits just on Apple II stuff this year. So there are a lot of people actively developing it, which is more than you can say for, frankly, most Apple II emulators. That counts for a lot. It's still, a little bit buggy, especially on the GS, but the fact that it's getting active development really counts for a lot. And I think the real impact of Ample, I think for some of us, certainly me, is that it just shatters that barrier to entry. Like MAME terrifies me. Like I managed to get it set up for my MAME arcade machine, and it took me like 3 weeks, and I never wanted to do it again. It was just 3 weeks of digging through documentation and INI files, and it was a nightmare. I had my personal 2GS programming project up and running in MAME through Ample in 90 seconds. Like it literally just worked. There was a button that said download all the ROMs, and it did. There was a button that said make a 2GS, and it did. And it was just running. So, that alone is a huge impact, I think. So MAME is definitely, coming to its own.
Yeah, for so long, MAME wasn't even on the list of go-to emulators for the Apple II system, or people just chucked it on the end to say, and MAME. But now it's a serious contender, and the ease of use there, that is something that I want to hook up now, especially being an Apple II aficionado. There's now an emulator out there that caters directly to me.
I'm hoping that I've been trying to compile MES, the MES version of MAME for the Raspberry Pi, because I realized LinApple does not even run full speed Apple II on an early Raspberry Pi. The only one that will is a Pi 4 out of LinApple will actually run full speed. So I'm hoping that'll be a solution.
Yeah, I think
maybe just not to deviate too far from Apple II, but Apple is a good front end. It has in it the front end for the Macs as well. So, which is something I never think of MAME for. But
the what?
That's another area that's gotten a lot of development love in the last year, especially was the early Mac support in MAME.
Yeah, Ample is just a great MAME front end for Macs, period. I mean, it's got a ROM management interface and a platform manager. Like, you can go in there and add other stuff. And the great thing about it is that it generates command lines for you as well, and scripts. So if you want to integrate it into your build pipeline, for example, you can configure MAME in the nice GUI, and then it tells you what the command line is to do that same thing, which you can then paste into your make-file. So like, that alone is worth the price of admission.
MAME has been
anything that spits out something I can double click on, and then or send to somebody and they can double click on it. Kay, you're next on my screen. What was your impression this year?
The conference was great. The talks were great. The people who put on the conference were great. I have no complaints. It was wonderful. However, I at the risk of being a Debbie Downer, online KansasFest is 1/1000th the fun of real life KansasFest. And so I found this to be a bittersweet experience. For me personally, and this is just me and whatever my attitude this weekend, more bitter than sweet. I mean, last year, the pandemic was relatively new. I was very stressed about the world situation, and like, oh boy, KansasFest, here's something different. Here's all my friends. And it was a big relief. And this year, I was happy to see all y'all, but it was still like, oh, it's another Zoom conference. And so I went and I enjoyed myself, and yet I felt like this should be more fun. I should be wandering the halls of Rockhurst, and So
I'm with Kay on that one. That's what I definitely miss. Is just the accidental conversations that you get yourself into, the sidebars that just occur because you just bump into somebody and you just start chatting, and you've got to have a mindset of, no, this is just not another Zoom conference for work. I got to that's why I made sure I moved downstairs back into the 8-bit bunker, away from where I'm normally doing my work. I'm with Kay. I really miss the personal interaction, and I would have loved to have had more people over here with me sharing that experience, but not mentioning the C word, but we're in lockdown here. We're not even allowed to leave our houses at the moment, or blocks of land, whatever. So
what does that have to do with Commodore?
I feel kind of the same way, but part of me is like, this is a lot more comfortable than going out in the world would normally be. I had Discord open, I had Slack open, I had the Zoom chat windows open, I had stuff like things on my phone, and like I had so many screens around me. It's almost like I should have had, like, with the VR goggles and just been in that Unreal Engine and walking around the halls. It was almost immersive.
I know, 4 screens going, and I still had to reach for my iPhone to check something.
I feel okay, though. I mean, KFest is awesome, and I'm super glad that we're able to do it this way. It's just so much better than nothing. But yeah, I think at this point we're all a little weary of Zoom for sure. I felt that also.
Does anyone have the attendance numbers for this year? How many people watched the live streams versus signed into the Zoom webinar?
We're in the high 200s, I think, both days on Zoom.
I think we had about 450 people registered. And then I think Kat's right. It was 250 maybe approximately who were actually in the Zoom at any one time. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was usually between 250 and 300.
And there was also the YouTube. Sometimes people would switch to the YouTube because Zoom couldn't quite handle it for some people or locations. So YouTube was sometimes better.
Ken says the YouTube live stream has 433 views.
Speaking of Ken, how many KansasFests is this now for you? Is it like 24, 25?
You are right on the nail. 24 consecutive KansasFest for me out of the 33 that have been held. It's my second virtual KansasFest. Like everybody else, hoping it's my last virtual conference, last virtual KansasFest. Don't disagree with anything Kay said, but this was still 1/1000th more KansasFest than we could have otherwise. So I'm glad for that at least. My challenge with online conferences is when I go to physical KansasFest, like Quinn, I like to attend the sessions, and I try to close my laptop and pay attention to the session. With a virtual conference, you can't close your laptop and attend the session. And so I have my computer open and I can't help myself but watch the session and look at the Zoom chat and look at the 20 different Discord channels and check Twitter and check my email, because KansasFest is happening in all of those places at any given time. So I'm very much looking forward to a conference where I can be a little bit less distractible. That said, this KansasFest was amazing, and my favorite session was about the Chinese computer by Bruce Rosenblum of Publish It 3, the desktop publishing program for the Apple II, and Tom Mulaney, who previously wrote the book, The Chinese Typewriter, for MIT Press. He's working on an upcoming book, The Chinese Computer, also for MIT Press. And they were talking about Sinotype 3, a Chinese word processor that Bruce developed for the Apple II, despite not knowing Chinese, which I thought was the real kicker. He's like, here I am using my program, and I'm really just posing for the photo. I don't know what I'm doing here. That was amazing. I had the pleasure to meet Bruce. He's based in the Boston area. Jason Scott actually introduced us one year. I was interviewing Jason for Computer World magazine, and I did a ride along. I basically just wanted to see what a day in the life of Jason Scott was like. That explains a lot of my nightmares.
I was going to say.
But he stopped by Bruce's office, and he introduced us, and we've been in frequent communication ever since. So it was great to see him at KansasFest. And of course, I'm delighted to be attending some of KansasFest in person with Chris, who's on my screen just right there. So, I mean, last year I was huddled in a basement in Missoula, Montana. This year I get to hang out with an actual Apple II user at KansasFest. So that's something a lot of us don't get to do nowadays.
Maybe next year you'll be huddled in a basement in Missouri.
I would love that.
Or in a cabin.
All together in the chapel.
That's right.
One of the new sort of dorm cabins. So we got
see a set of Beagle Brothers on the screen.
Yeah.
Aww. Bernard.
This is Bernard. He remembers Ken. Ken met Bernard many months ago.
I don't know how your pictures are oriented, folks, but I've got Mark with a beagle and Quinn's shoulders from Mark's shoulders. So for me, it's I
can see it on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
You can drag and drop the tiles. You can move them to make that happen.
Yeah. I've just posted that photo on Twitter and onto the Apple Enthusiast group. So Quinn, I love your beagle.
Thank you. It's new. Did you like my E7 Bitstream t-shirt?
Oh, the bit. Quick, Mark, change your t-shirt.
Well, yeah.
This is great podcast material, by the way, everyone.
But turn your camera off first.
Yeah, YouTube's the YouTube guys, the YouTube viewers are getting bonus material.
Bonus content. Yeah.
Bonus level.
So we've heard about some of people's favorite sessions. I wanted to have a rundown of what people thought of the Hack Fest this year. It was all gold.
My gosh.
Not only did I not have time to enter anything, but I would have withdrawn my entry as soon as I saw Cucumba's name come up in the Discord saying, I'm just gonna whip out something here and 10 bytes. I'm like, okay, nope.
Several people expressed that sort of sentiment, but honestly, the scoring was very close between first, second, and third.
And Mark, why don't you explain Cucumba's entries? You're probably best qualified to do so.
Yeah, so Cucumba likes to write low-level disk code, and he's written a number of different bootloaders that boot up a floppy disk very quickly. He wrote all of the low-level code for Total Replay and Pitch Dark, and he took an idea and kind of ran with it for Hackfest of writing a bootloader that would load up off of a standard 5.25-inch floppy disk on real hardware on a real Apple II using, the real Apple II ROMs and so on, except that the bootloader is written almost entirely in BASIC, which is completely insane, even given Cucumba's base level of insanity.
Yeah. And when I want to clarify, it's
anyway.
Not
that's the best way I can describe it.
It's using like whole routines and stuff, and it's not just like poking the bytes in that would be would be in there anyway.
Oh no. You like with the sector editor, you can go look and read the code because it's actually text in the on the disk, and which it then takes and moves into the input buffer and then tells the Apple II ROM to go interpret it in a certain way, either as a set of monitor commands or later as a set of basic commands. Like he's actually, there's an entire basic program in the bootloader. Like it's not just peek this and poke that. It's anyway, it defies, he has an entire write-up, which is several pages long, and is probably still missing a lot of details, and it defies explanation.
Yeah, I kind of feel that we all turn up to a 10-line program competition in the Old West, and then suddenly Cucumber turns up with the sun behind him. He's go 10 bytes will go home, and all of us just scatter. It's amazing. When I saw what he was doing, how he did it, I was going, I'm so glad I have no time to actually to do what I wanted to do for Hackfest. So it's like, let's all play for second place.
I think I was really struck just by the very first step. I think the very first step was brilliant because it really is like, I forget what it is, 12 bytes or something. But basically what he did was he recruited pieces of the computer that were there for other purposes. And he basically just read the first sector into the keyboard buffer. So he managed to point the input, the buffer at where the keyboard buffer was going to go. So he just, sucked in that data and then said, interpret, so it's basically just whatever you can do, 10 bytes. And then from there, it could build up the rest of it, which is also amazing. But just thinking of that first step is, the thing is, it's that much code.
It's literally bootstrapping from nothing.
That's not.
What was the
that said?
Is that the listener, the GS listener?
Yeah. I wanted to mention Listener. Listener was very cool,
amazing.
And if you haven't seen it, he also posted. For those who didn't see the KansasFest, Listener is a combination iOS app and 2GS new desk accessory. So it works in any 2GS, the app that runs on GSOS, and it does dictation. You talk into your iPhone, and it communicates over the local network to your network enabled 2GS, which still sort of blows my mind. I'm not really in that world, and every time I see somebody who does something,
I'd love to see
the network
use that to actually ride his bootstrap.
Yeah.
Don't give him
so
ideas.
like he's talking, and then in real time it's showing up on the 2GS screen. It's being typed, but for those who haven't seen it, he also did a demo video of playing a text adventure with this. So he's actually speaking the commands, and they're getting typed into
he's pandering to the judges.
And it's just a phenomenal combination of old and new.
Yeah.
I just
Take
think
lamp,
that
new line.
As someone who works in education,
Get lamp, new line.
the fact that it's going to make the Apple II, at least the Apple II GS, accessible to more people. If you have issues with your hands and you can't type, so much of the Apple II is unavailable to you. But if you can, talk to your computer, that's going to open up a whole new world for a whole new set of people to get into this. And that was what made me go, ah!
I already talked to my computer.
But speaking of accessible, I love the fact that there were these professional captions for the Zoom this year, and they were crazy good.
Thank you so
Watching them, I'm like,
much
how does
for
anybody
paying for
do
that.
this and keep up live with all this jargon, like vintage computer jargon? It was very impressive, and I
downloaded the transcript of my talk, and like, except for a couple of places where I was saying like the hex bytes, it looked great. It was grammatically correct and everything. So I'm gonna take that and attach it to the video when I post it somewhere. So it's just it's great. That was a big addition this year. Even when I could watch it scrolling by as it was muted and I was doing something for work on Friday, I was like, I'm going to keep an eye on this.
Yeah. Didn't we have that last year?
We had it. Yeah, we had it last year.
It was the same.
I didn't even know.
We had a request for it last year, actually. And it's just, again, from an accessibility standpoint, we're like, yeah, that makes sense. That scans.
Yeah.
And
then I don't remember
actually,
last year, so I don't remember taking advantage of it.
Yeah, she did it last year, and she actually messaged us after it was over this year saying, actually, even though we're paying her to do the service, she was like, thanks so much for, letting me be part of this. And I actually, enjoy doing this, even though, she said she didn't necessarily understand a whole lot of it, but she apparently, it was enjoyable. So that's great.
She learned a lot about double high res or high res.
GS, the Apple II GS, whatever that.
Yeah, she's our new subject matter expert on quite a few different topics.
This was the year of double high res. Actually, there was a talk explaining the internals of how it works. That was the best talk on that I've seen. Every year seemingly there's a talk that at least covers exactly how the Apple II maps the bitstream onto an NTSC waveform. But this was the best version of that I've ever seen. Like, it was concise, and it had the color space, and it showed how it adds the vectors from the bits to create the colors. It was just chef kiss. It was perfect. So if you're still mystified by how Apple II video is generated from the bits in video memory, go watch that talk, because it's outstanding.
Yeah. So anybody who was planning for a future KFest of explaining that particular thing, find something else to present about, because it's been done. Yeah, that was one of those things I was like, okay, there's going to be 2 or 3 talks of re-explaining in a different way things that were explained in the past that I didn't quite catch, or I did at the time, but as soon as the session was over, it disappeared. And there were several things this year where it was like, it partly because I think I was focused on that and not distracted by going out in the hall and all the other things and sleep deprivation. But some of the explanations for things that were that had been talked about before, they just they clicked, and maybe tomorrow I'll have completely forgotten them again. But for right now, I have a much better grasp.
Yeah, there was also,
speaking of graphics, the artist, the Lucia.
Oh my God!
That was my favorite session.
Maximizing Apple Color bit by bit was such a fascinating talk.
So good.
Yeah, And along with the one for Jeff Raskin, I loved that we had effectively some sessions which were stories. They were narrative. They weren't technical sessions. They were some good stories. So Petar with his ROM journeys with his Oki printers, that was good. It was storytelling, and a lot of the times I think a little bit of storytelling goes a long way. And there were not a session, but in between the sessions, there was Ken's moth presentation. And again, that was a great story. And I think it doesn't hurt to have a bit of storytelling going on just to get us through can be somewhat dry technical things at times. No matter how interesting it is to find out exactly how the color space of double high res works, I like a nice story.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, even though I completely agree with Kay and what, he was saying about the in-person versus the virtual, that is one advantage of doing virtual is you can draw, the presentations from a broader pool where people that maybe wouldn't normally travel to Kansas City in the middle of July, or just, it was something that they did 30 years ago, but they're not invested in it now. We saw some really cool talks like Lucia's, like the one on the Sinotype, the Chinese. I don't think we would have seen either one of those at a regular KansasFest, because there would have been no incentive for them to come and give that talk. So there is something a little bit to be said for, maybe we'll do a virtual every 10 or 15 years, we can.
Well, I mean, could you see reaching out to some of these people to have a pre-recorded thing to air at KansasFest? And
I was going to say,
kind of going forward.
Note to organizers, grab some storytelling and some other recorded material from people who can't make it.
Some of the sessions this year seemed to do better in a recorded format because they had that production, being able to zoom in on things and really focus on things that were visual, or they had elements of something that you couldn't really grasp by sitting in an audience on a projector and somebody pointing at things. Having that as an option for people, not only because nobody has to travel, but because some people have things that don't work out well presented live in a talking head kind of format. Another one of those notes for future K-Fest.
The recorded ones were great because they gave the presenter the opportunity to go in and say, I need to explain something. So it was good. It was allowed for a nice finished product that fitted nicely into the allocated time. It was superb.
I think there's a greater number of those pre-recorded sessions this year as well compared to last year, and I think that made the entire K-Fest move a lot more smoothly. We were able to go from session to session to session with fewer glitches, hops, and steps, because it's just play video, answer questions, next session. Let's do the thing. The downside is we lose some of that wonderful interaction that we have in person, though. So.
Right, but everybody that's done their pre-recorded knows exactly how long it's going to take because they've edited it or whatever.
That was actually nice from a planning perspective too. It's like, okay, we know this was going to take this much of the slot, so we know what time to be ready to, come back in and take questions or whatever. That was actually made it a lot. There's just
set the alarm.
Sometimes they still run long.
Except for the few that we got that were actually longer than a lot of time, but that's okay.
It's not perfect system.
Well, I mean, one of them was recorded like at 2 a.m. this morning.
Yeah.
Because he had he had an emergency basically to attend to.
Charles, I wanted to say on yours, the understanding blockchain with the Apple II, I understand blockchain a lot better than I did. That was a fantastic talk.
I'm actually going to pass that blockchain one of yours on to some people I know who were wanting me to explain blockchain, and I'd rather your explanation than anything I could actually come up with.
All right, I appreciate it. Yeah, like I said in the talk, it's like I understand something better if I've built one myself. Internal combustion engines, I kind of understand theoretically, but I've never really gotten my hands inside of one.
But you still have to get Quinn
building things.
You still get
Scott
Quinn to make
Burke's
you a bid.
Which one? What, Carrington?
I was saying, speaking of building things, I was really impressed by Scott Burke's Apple II Home,
yes,
the spike pewter.
The big wall thing. That was good.
So
good.
A 16-bit was a RISC microprocessor made of discrete electronics, and just like that whole talk was mind blowing.
When you mention visual computing, it's not quite what you expect.
Again, for anyone who didn't see it, it was a homebrew computer built entirely from discrete transistors, something like 9,000 transistors. So he built up his own ALU and his own shifters and adders and everything, and the control unit and everything. He had LEDs and everything. The EL wire was a real standout feature. So he paired each of his buses with EL wires that lit up when those buses were accessed, so you could actually see the data moving around in the computer. That's a feature I have not seen before in a homebrew machine.
He sourced large pegboard size breadboards to actually wire it all up on. I thought even just to that extent it was great. But those electroluminescent wiring showing the activity paths, it was great.
I love that he spared no shortcuts either. He even went, okay, I could just throw a 555 timer in there to be my time. No, I'm going to build one out of it, because why not? I did the whole thing. I might as well do that too.
Yeah, and then for the Apple II connection, he used his Apple II to debug it and to talk to it, which was super cool. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, because when I think of EL wire, I think of like costuming applications where people just like plug it into a power box and use it to light wings or whatever up. It's actual wire, and it can. That was the big. It's actual wire, and it can actually carry signal, carry electricity, and glow at the same time. And now I've got ideas.
Yeah, it's like the inside of all those clear case Apple IIs is going to be. John, do you have one?
Done EL wire in costuming. And they also make EL panels too. They make electroluminescent panels. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like rainbow ribbon cable where each one is a different color.
Yes.
I was like, I'm going to go into the floppy drive, and it's got the
get that Kickstarter going.
That'll be the new option 8 project. We'll see.
I'll put an order in for a couple of tens of meters.
I'm done making hardware, I think. Just too many supply side problems. All right, so we've talked about some of the sessions, talked about how awesome the organizers are, and we've talked about HackFest. There were some other contests. Was there? I know there was a high score contest for bugs.
Yeah, the high score for bugs. That was just kind of popped up at the last minute, actually, because it was like, hey, we haven't done anything like this in actually several Kansas Fests, whether or not it's virtual or in person. So let's do it this year, especially because everybody's, really into this game and it's getting a lot of attention. So let's do the thing.
And there's going to be a whole talk about how the graphics.
And there's going to be a whole talk about how it was done.
Optimizing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we said, and it was, it was not that hard. Something like that's not that hard to put together. It was just the big worry that I had, and Jeremy was super helpful with, was people. I don't know why you would cheat, but whatever. But Jeremy said Jeremy had a pretty good idea if anybody was up to stuff of funny business, and it went really well. And people, I think, people got into it.
Yeah, was there there wasn't like a door contest. Was there a backdrop contest last year?
No, we didn't do that this year. We've tried to do something. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're breathing too heavily, Kat.
There was such a contest last year, but it kind of didn't go very well. It was not. It was kind of unclear exactly what the rules were, and so we decided it'd be better for just a door next time there are physical doors.
Another thing that just sort of cropped up out of nowhere was Slackfest, which was the people who couldn't get their Hackfests in on time. They just we're going to do our own thing, and with no deadlines and no rules, and there were several submissions, and I didn't have to judge it, so that was great.
Oh, I think that's the competition for me then.
it's good that sort of ad hoc thing was able to come up, because that's kind of the spirit of the event too.
Yeah, it does help fill some of that spontaneity that you get when you're there in person, for sure. It's nice that people are doing stuff like that virtually, at least.
Yeah, all the Hackfest prizes were bought by the KansasFest committee this year. Usually they go looking for donations. So when they said one of the prizes is a Juice GS subscription, I was like, wait a minute, they didn't ask me about that. And I was like, oh wait, they didn't need to.
Yeah, Ken gets to have another dinner.
I get to put that money toward more pizza for y'all next year.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm. You can take us all out to the vegetarian restaurant again, and buy us all a bunch of video games at the arcade.
Love it. Except one of our vegetarian restaurants closed forever, like 3 years ago.
It's all right. There's still like one more in Kansas City, right?
This is true. We now go there like twice a year due to lack of alternatives. But yeah.
All right. Is there anything that other folks want to highlight or show us?
Yeah, I got one. There was some really amazing hardware projects this year, and one real standout one was the DMA card that's under development. He's building a card based on a CPLD dev board that can go in an Apple II and basically act as DMA for any regions of memory. And he's targeting it specifically as a video accelerator, but you could use it for a lot of things. And he's specifically implementing Amiga-like custom chips. So he's specifically creating a copper and a blitter and similar chips with the remaps and the interrupts and so on. So it's the potential of that is absolutely enormous. It was extremely clever. And the applications of that I think are really broad. Just a generic, fast DMA could accelerate just about any part of the machine. So that was super cool. That was Michael Morrison, the DMAC, I believe was the name of that project. So it's still early in development, but he's got some basic things working, and I think this time next year that might be really amazing.
Was his the one I had to kind of go back and forth so much because of work and other things. Was his the one that demoed basically like, hardware sprites, like the sprite?
Yeah, exactly.
Generation?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's because it's just a memory mover. It's agnostic to video modes, to anything else. So you want double low res hardware sprites, you get them because it's just moving memory around. So yeah, super cool. And then, he's implementing the copper from the Amiga so it can do transforms. So it can mask and combine backgrounds and do all that kind of stuff. So you get all kinds of layering and stuff, which, I mean, on an Apple II, that amount of horsepower is, it would be crazy what you could do with that.
Especially the potential of having it just have its own memory map. And so like I can just deal with things linearly and just say, you throw it into where it's supposed to go and forget the holes in the way, because the Apple II really suffers from the odd memory mapping for video. And the idea that you could just say, forget it. Here, take this and just dump it. That's huge.
Yeah. That's
as exemplified by the 19 different double low res or double high res, how to do purple and double high res talks over the last few years. Yeah.
Yeah, and that linear memory remap is an application that wasn't specifically on his mind, but it's one of these projects that people started coming up with other ways to use it. And that was one that came up was, if you're remapping anyway, why don't you just present me with a virtual linear memory buffer and I can fill that, and then you can DMA that into the crazy format of the Apple II's video memory, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's just huge. I mean, that's automatic acceleration right there. If I don't have to bounce every video memory right off 3 different lookup tables, that kind of stuff is
avoiding
really
potholes, avoiding potholes by ignoring the potholes.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot more hardware this year. I think people had, not only were it was more accessible as a thing to present because you could do multiple cameras and get close in on things, but people were just more comfortable with doing different kinds of projects because again, they're not having to present it to a room full of people on a projector that Yeah, you can edit your thoughts,
or taking
which I can't do when I'm talking.
Or taking a wall. Yeah, or taking a wall full of 16-bit homemade computer, putting it into a suitcase, traveling to.
Yeah, some of the hardware stuff is cool because you don't have to move it. You don't have to take it through or TSA. I would love to see what the TSA would have to do with some of the stuff we saw this year.
That's why you drive. That's why you pack up the trunk of the SUV and.
Well, that's why I drive. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, no, that's why I drive.
You should see their faces when you try to ship nearly 100 pounds of hardware in your suitcase from USA back to Sydney.
It's drive.
Attention. No.
Yes.
The wet bit puts me off.
The car is not amphibious, at least not twice.
Yeah. It's finding a good boat ramp on the West Coast is the problem.
All right, so that puts us at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So we've been doing this for about an hour. We're sort of waxing or waning.
Yeah.
In our energy level, I know my blood sugar's gone dangerously low. We can all say our good nights. So I'm just going to go. I'm going to go around the screen, my screen at least, and give everybody an opportunity to say goodbye and good night. And so we'll start with Chris.
All right. Goodbye and good night, and we'll see you next time.
All right. No closing remarks. Just that.
No, it's good.
All right. Kat?
Good night, Gracie.
John?
Have a very good evening and looking forward to hopefully seeing most of you in person next year.
In person, 2022. Woo! Quinn?
I just want to say thanks to the KFest committee. You know, an event like this, even virtual or not, is a lot of work. So thank you all for doing this. Really appreciate it. Well, hopefully, see you all next year.
And Michael?
I hope you all enjoy your breakfast, but it's definitely bacon and eggs time for me. And again, to the organisers, this was the best work Zoom conference I have been in for the last 24 months.
Ken, you're up next.
Thanks all for making for another great Kansas Fest. You can always check out JuiceGS Magazine at www.juice.gs.
And thank you, Ken. Carrington.
KansasFest is amazing. Virtual KansasFest just reminds me how much I miss you guys. So really hope we can do it in person this time.
Paul?
Yep. So what are we saying? Good night and
just closing
thanks.
remarks.
But thanks everybody for showing up for this. I mean, it's been lots of people contributed lots of really interesting talks. We couldn't even include them all on the schedule. Having everybody participate is, part of the thing that makes this work at all. So thanks everybody for also being willing to put up with the virtual version one more time.
And Kay, I apologize.
Good night and good luck.
Joe?
Threatening.
Thanks for having me on K-Fest this year, guys. It's awesome. I'm sad that it had to be virtual this year, but next year we'll be all in person, we hope, and it'll be super awesome. And my final remark is, it does not surprise me I lost our game. I am bad at math.
Next year in the Holy Land. And Javier.
Hey, thank you very much for having me at least a few minutes. And don't forget to follow me, youtube.com/habmaster and 8-bit tees.
Comment,
thank you very much, guys. And I'll see you
with a J, right?
With a J, Habmaster. And please, I want to see you all. Honestly, I miss you all in person. So hopefully I'll see you next year.
All right.
Thank you.
And on behalf of all 13 of us,
I was doing gang signs.
Yeah. Mangan Games Incorporated.
I wish you a happy K-Fest, and it's all about the people. Good night.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
Retro compute.
Retro Bride.
Compute.
That was about as good as the retro we do on the RCR.
This has been the Open Apple Podcast. Find more episodes, read our newsletter, or send feedback by visiting us on the web at www.open-apple.net.
Oh, the strategies. I have no idea.